siblings is as if someone wants to erase.
Which is why we are celebrating 25 years.
What happens when the man who saved Harry and Meghan decides he's done protecting their secrets? It's a royal scandal that's been brewing behind the scenes, hidden in the private mansion of one of Hollywood's most powerful figures, Tyler Perry. When Harry and Meghan left their royal duties behind, their fairy tale escape wasn't orchestrated by Buckingham Palace or even their closest royal allies. It was Tyler Perry, billionaire filmmaker, who stepped in as their unlikely savior. His private jet whisked them away. His fortress-like mansion shielded them from relentless paparazzi, royal aides, and tabloid frenzy. Perry's generosity wasn't just material, it was deeply symbolic. Meghan honored him as the godfather to their daughter Lilibet, a role so sacred it signified a lifelong bond. Cameras rolled, Netflix captured tender moments, and Meghan publicly called him her protector, chosen family, and the rock on which her post-royal independence was built. Everything was picture-perfect, scripted like a modern-day Hollywood drama, until reality shattered the illusion. Without warning, Tyler Perry was hit by a staggering $260 million lawsuit alleging a toxic workplace and serious misconduct. Overnight, Hollywood's beloved fairy godfather became radioactive. Meghan and her PR team panicked and swiftly erased Perry from her public image. Photos deleted, Instagram posts archived, interviews edited, and even Lilibet's Wikipedia page quietly revised. Tyler Perry, once celebrated publicly as family, was scrubbed clean as if he'd never existed. But the internet quickly noticed. Screenshots spread like wildfire. Hashtags like #Where'sTyler began trending. Royal watchers and online detectives pieced together Meghan's dramatic digital erasure. Perry, the man who provided sanctuary during their darkest hour, had suddenly become a liability. However, Meghan's PR team overlooked one critical detail. Tyler Perry isn't just another Hollywood celebrity. He's a seasoned businessman armed with meticulous records and airtight legal agreements. His hospitality came with fine print, a carefully worded clause allowing disclosure if either party publicly distanced themselves. Simply put, Meghan's abrupt erasure triggered a legal landmine. Perry, a billionaire with razor-sharp attorneys, now held the legal right to release hours of private footage, conversations, and intimate secrets. Sources close to Perry revealed he meticulously documented the Sussex's stay, capturing private calls, emotional breakdowns, and strategic planning sessions. Moments Meghan never expected would see daylight. Then came the leak. A 58-second clip surfaced online, Meghan clearly strategizing about how to best exploit sympathy from comparisons to Princess Diana. Harry's voice chimed in, worrying aloud that their Netflix special was becoming too staged. Social media exploded. Selective sympathy trended instantly, and Meghan's carefully curated image started unraveling at alarming speed. Brands she partnered with paused campaigns and projects quietly stalled. The Sussex empire suddenly teetered on the brink. With more leaks hinted to be imminent, Meghan plunged into crisis mode. Her Instagram transformed overnight into a curated stream of serene garden shots, motherhood wisdom, and wellness tips, desperately attempting to flood the narrative with positivity. But the public saw through it. Comment sections were overtaken by demands for answers. "Where's Tyler?" echoed relentlessly. Meanwhile, Harry panicked. According to insiders, he swiftly booked a secret flight back to England, retreating to a discreet countryside location. Seeking counsel from trusted royal allies, Harry wasn't plotting a return. He was fighting for survival. He knew the narrative they'd painstakingly built could collapse with the release of more Perry tapes. Back in California, Meghan's team scrambled, coordinating emergency meetings, influencer campaigns, and frantic PR maneuvers. Yet, nothing could drown out the public's skepticism. Tyler Perry, still silent publicly, was sending an unmistakable message. "You can't erase me." And the palace was watching closely. Aides who once endured Meghan's accusations now watched with quiet vindication as Sussex secrets leaked into the open. William and Charles remained strategically silent, knowing the public spectacle was damaging enough without royal interference. Critical mistake Meghan made was underestimating Tyler Perry. He wasn't some celebrity to discard lightly. He was an empire builder, a strategist. His silence wasn't forgiveness, it was tactical. With television networks and streaming giants lining up, Harry held the power to unleash a media storm that could bury the Sussex brand permanently. rumors began swirling about explosive sit-down interviews Perry might grant, detailing the true dynamics behind Harry and Meghan's Netflix specials, the Oprah interview, and their strategic media plays. The leaked clip was only a preview. Perry reportedly possessed 17 hours of unfiltered recordings. Every conversation, every whisper, every frantic planning session was documented meticulously. Potential fallout terrified Harry. Whispers emerged of back-channel discussions about partial royal duties, a strategic retreat designed to stabilize his rapidly unraveling credibility. He was caught between loyalty to his wife and desperation to salvage what remained of his reputation. As public opinion shifted dramatically, even Meghan's staunchest supporters hesitated. She was no longer perceived as the empowered outsider who bravely escaped royal oppression, but as someone who might have carefully manipulated sympathy for personal gain. Tyler Perry's archive threatened to expose the uncomfortable truth that their authentic journey was potentially scripted from the start. With each passing day, anticipation built around Perry's next move. Legal experts speculated he'd leverage these recordings not just for self-defense, but as a strategic weapon. Harry, known for turning adversities into successes, was perfectly positioned to rewrite the entire Sussex narrative, and perhaps reclaim control of his damaged image. So here we stand. Meghan, once untouchable, now scrambling desperately behind the scenes. Harry, isolated and anxious, pondering an unprecedented return to royal obligations. Tyler Perry, silent yet powerful, strategically waiting to unleash the truth. Their fairy tale escape has become a cautionary tale of betrayal, reputation management, and the destructive power of secrets. As the world watches eagerly, one question remains. Is this the explosive end of Meghan and Harry's carefully crafted empire, or merely the first chapter in a much darker, more revealing saga? For those who have been paying attention over the years, the warning signs were always there. Behind the glossy magazine spreads and carefully staged photographs, there existed a tension that no amount of flattering headlines could disguise. People who had worked alongside Meghan and Harry, publicists, former palace aides, producers, had quietly shared stories that all painted a similar portrait. That of a couple who measured every public word, every charitable appearance, every teary confession against the potential for public sympathy and commercial success. And yet, in the early days, it had worked magnificently. Public was eager to embrace the tale of a modern Cinderella, a self-made American actress whisked into royalty, then exiled by outdated traditions. That story resonated across oceans. But as time passed, more began to see the difference between heartfelt authenticity and the orchestrated performance of vulnerability. It was that thin distinction that Tyler Perry now threatened to obliterate completely. The leaks of Perry's private recordings weren't merely a scandal. They were the unraveling of a myth. The narrative that Harry and Meghan were simply seeking peace and a quiet life in California began to look suspiciously hollow. If they truly craved privacy, why had every milestone and heartbreak been packaged and sold to the highest bidder? The Netflix series, the Spotify deals, the book tours. Each one chipped away at the idea that the Sussexes were hapless victims of the press. Now, Perry's archive risked shattering it altogether. And it was not lost on the public that Tyler Perry had remained largely silent, not issuing a single interview, not giving a single statement beyond his legal filings. That silence had weight. It stood in stark contrast to Meghan and Harry's often relentless need to control the narrative. Every time Meghan posted a peaceful photo of her garden or a poem about resilience, the comments were flooded with a simple refrain: "Release the tapes." Even the most seasoned royal commentators admitted they had never seen anything like it. Not in the era of Diana, nor during the scandal of Edward VIII's abdication. This was something new, a modern media feud playing out in real time with billionaires, royals, and Hollywood titans locked in a silent war over control of the truth itself. Back in Montecito, neighbors whispered about the palpable anxiety that seemed to hang over Meghan's mansion like a fog. Paparazzi had camped out again, drawn by the tantalizing prospect that Tyler Perry might at any moment deliver the final blow. Every delivery truck, every unfamiliar car pulling into the driveway sparked speculation. Some said it was lawyers coming to negotiate. Others claimed Meghan had hired a crisis management team so vast that they were working in shifts, attempting around the clock to contain the damage. But no amount of spin could erase the unease in Harry's eyes when he was spotted boarding that discreet private flight to London. He had always carried the guilt of what leaving the royal family had cost. his relationships with his father, his brother, the institution that had shaped his life. And now, as the house of cards teetered, that guilt must have felt heavier than ever. In the quiet halls of Windsor, palace insiders were reportedly divided. Some felt vindicated, believing that the couple's true nature was finally being revealed. Others felt an old sadness, a wish that it hadn't come to this. Even William, who had every reason to gloat, was said to have declined opportunities to comment. To many, it seemed the Windsors understood that in the grand scheme this was not just a Sussex crisis. It was a crisis that reflected on the monarchy itself, on its inability to hold a fractured family together. Meanwhile, the tabloids and television networks could barely contain their glee. For years, they had been accused, sometimes rightly, of hounding Harry and Meghan unfairly. Now, with the Perry tapes threatening to show the couple's own hand in cultivating fame, the press smelled vindication. Front pages speculated feverishly about what might be on those 17 hours of recordings. Was there evidence of staged pap walks? Strategizing about exploiting Diana's legacy? Heated arguments that revealed cracks in the marriage itself? Public curiosity was insatiable, but for Meghan and Harry, the reality was likely far more sobering. Each day they delayed an honest response, their credibility eroded further. Each deflection only fueled suspicions that there was indeed something to hide. Even seasoned Hollywood PR experts admitted they had never seen a celebrity brand deteriorate so rapidly. One anonymous crisis consultant told a reporter, "They've built an entire persona on being authentic. If those tapes contradict that image, they'll never fully recover." For Tyler Perry, however, this was more than a matter of reputation. It was a question of principle. He had risked much to help them. He had shared his home, his security teams, and his influence. He had asked for nothing in return except mutual respect. To be erased from their story so unceremoniously was, to Perry, not just an insult but a betrayal of everything he believed about loyalty and gratitude. And so he waited, biding his time as Meghan's team scrambled to spin. Harry retreated into old regrets, and the palace watched from afar. Power had shifted. No longer did Harry and Meghan control the narrative. Now, Tyler Perry did, and he knew it. Behind closed doors, Meghan's advisors debated the only path that might salvage their standing. Some argued that she should preemptively release her own account, an Oprah-style interview in which she could frame her choices sympathetically, explain her fear of being associated with Perry's legal troubles. Others believed it was time to go fully silent, to let the storm pass in hopes that the public's attention would drift elsewhere. But there was no consensus because, deep down, everyone knew that the genie was out of the bottle. Even if Perry never released another clip, the damage had been done. The first leak was enough to plant the seed of doubt, and in the modern media age, doubt spreads like wildfire. Meanwhile, the companies that had once lined up to work with Meghan and Harry began to drift away. A luxury skincare brand postponed a collaboration indefinitely. A tech startup quietly ended contract discussions. A podcast distributor who had once courted Meghan's lifestyle content now cited scheduling conflicts and disappeared from the conversation. In the world of commerce, perception is everything, and right now their image was radioactive. As for Harry, he found himself in the most painful dilemma of all. He had traded the security of his birthright for the chance to build an independent life. Yet here he was, contemplating whether the only way to survive was to return to the very institution he had rejected. Friends described him as restless and haunted, walking alone on the palace grounds during his secret visit to England, as if trying to decide whether he still belonged to the royal story, or whether it was truly too late to go back. In moments of clarity, Harry must have recognized that no amount of carefully worded statements or curated social media posts could undo the fact that he and Meghan had built their escape on foundations that were never as solid as they appeared. And now, every compromise, every calculation was coming to light. Perhaps the most telling sign of their desperation was the sudden appearance of stories about their philanthropic work. Profiles highlighting their donations to children's hospitals, their support of mental health charities, their environmental campaigns. These were noble endeavors, but everyone could see the timing for what it was, a frantic attempt to change the subject. Yet the public was no longer so easily swayed. They had seen behind the curtain, and they weren't willing to look away. Tyler Perry, for his part, seemed in no rush to escalate. He continued his projects, made no public pronouncements, and let the speculation do the work for him. He understood the art of suspense better than almost anyone alive. And he knew that sometimes the mere possibility of revelation was more powerful than the revelation itself. In the end, it was a classic lesson, one as old as the royals themselves. Secrets never stay buried, tales never go unpunished, and those who build an empire on perception must be prepared for the day perception turns against them. As the days turned into weeks, the tension only grew. Would Perry release another tape? Would Meghan finally sit down for a tell-all to salvage her version of events? Would Harry make an unprecedented move and return to the fold of his birthright? No one could say for sure. But in the quiet hours before dawn, when the world was still asleep and the headlines hadn't yet updated, you could almost sense that all three of them, Meghan, Harry, and Perry, were lying awake, each wondering who would blink first. Because in this high-stakes standoff, only one truth was clear. No amount of spin could change the fact that the fairy tale had ended and the reckoning had begun. In Montecito, the summer air was thick with unspoken dread. Meghan's inner circle, which had once been so loyal, began to fracture under the weight of the crisis. Some advisors privately questioned her decision to erase Tyler Perry so abruptly. They argued that even if she had legitimate reasons to distance herself, she could have done so quietly, without scrubbing him from the story that had defined her reinvention. But that was the thing about Meghan. She had never been one to take half measures. Her approach to crisis was always the same: act decisively, control the narrative, and project strength. For years, it had worked. It had carried her through palace intrigue, tabloid scandals, and internet conspiracy theories. But now, the same instincts had cornered her. Across the Atlantic, Harry found little comfort in familiar surroundings. While the British press speculated breathlessly about his secret return, he spent much of his time behind closed doors, speaking with a small circle of confidants. Men who had known him since before Meghan, before the Windsor Wars, before the palace exits and the streaming contracts. These were the voices who told him the truth he least wanted to hear. That sometimes you can't have both freedom and the protection of tradition. That sometimes you must choose who you are, no matter how painful that choice becomes. At night, when he lay awake in a quiet guest suite far from the public eye, he could feel the weight of all those decisions pressing down on his chest. He had spent so many years telling himself that leaving was the only way to protect his family. Now, as his reputation teetered on the edge of collapse, he couldn't shake the gnawing fear that he'd simply traded one prison for another. This one built not of royal expectations but of relentless self-marketing. Back in California, Meghan's attempts to project calm grew more elaborate. A glossy magazine profile was hastily arranged, designed to remind the public of her charitable work and her quiet strength in adversity. But the moment the cover image appeared online, a serene portrait of Meghan in a gauzy dress, cradling a bouquet of white roses, commenters flooded the post with the same question: "Where's Tyler?" The repetition was almost hypnotic, dominated headlines, hashtags, and late-night monologues. No matter how many positive stories were planted, the public refused to look away. They wanted answers, and no amount of distraction could satisfy that hunger. In boardrooms across Hollywood, producers and executives studied the situation like a case study in brand implosion. How had a couple who once seemed untouchable managed to lose control so spectacularly? The consensus was brutal. Authenticity had been their only real currency, and now, with Perry's looming archive, even that was evaporating. One streaming platform, which had been negotiating a second docuseries with the Sussexes, quietly pulled out. Another corporate sponsor delayed a major charitable campaign indefinitely. Internally, Meghan's team scrambled to find a narrative that would reassure their partners, but the offers and inquiries that once poured in so eagerly now slowed to a trickle. And still, Tyler Perry remained silent. That was perhaps the most unnerving part of all. He hadn't issued ultimatums or threats. He hadn't tried to sell his footage to the tabloids. Instead, he let the knowledge of what he possessed hang in the air like the scent of smoke before a fire. It was a masterclass in leverage, quiet, methodical, unshakable. As July crept toward August, the Sussexes faced a grim reality. Their carefully managed image could not be repaired with another tell-all interview or another podcast about resilience. Problem was no longer perception, it was trust. And once trust was gone, all the curated photos and uplifting slogans in the world could not bring it back. In Windsor, Charles and William reportedly met behind closed doors to discuss what this all meant for the monarchy. Some aides argued that the crown should seize this moment to issue a definitive statement, something that would distance the institution from the couple's chaos. But both men, seasoned by decades of scandal, understood that sometimes the wiser path was to say nothing at all. And so they waited as the world waited to see whether Perry would pull the trigger. No matter what happened next, the Sussex story would never be the same. The fairy tale had become a cautionary tale, a reminder that no matter how powerful your platform, how beloved your narrative, or how persuasive your image, truth has a way of catching up. As night fell over Montecito and the cameras zoomed in from afar, Meghan likely sat in her immaculate living room, the glow of her phone illuminating her face. Notifications, headlines, text messages from worried allies. And somewhere on a secure drive in Tyler Perry's possession, 17 hours of unfiltered memories, proof of who they really were when they thought no one was watching, waited patiently for the moment they would finally be set free.